For over 5,000 years, it has stood in the howling winds of the Salisbury Plain, an enduring titan of the ancient world. Stonehenge is perhaps the most instantly recognizable prehistoric monument on the planet. For generations, the narrative surrounding this circle of massive megaliths was relatively simple, almost comforting. It was a primitive solar calendar erected by isolated Neolithic farmers, dragging heavy rocks across the land to worship the sun and mark the changing of the seasons. But modern science has just shattered that comfortable narrative. Recent groundbreaking advancements in geochemistry, acoustics, and astronomical modeling have stripped away the myth of the primitive builder. What scientists are uncovering is not a simple calendar. It is a staggering achievement that hints at profound, forgotten knowledge and an unprecedented level of mastery extending far across the ancient landscape. The people who built Stonehenge were not isolated tribes working in the dark. They possessed a level of sophistication, coordination, and knowledge that fundamentally rewrites the history of human capability in the Neolithic age. To understand the true scale of this ancient achievement, we must first look at the very foundation of the monument, the stones themselves. For over a century, archaeologists confidently stated that they knew where the stones came from. The massive 25-ton sarsen stones standing in the outer ring were dragged from Marlborough, roughly 19 miles away. The smaller inner blue stones, each weighing several tons, were famously traced to the Preseli Hills in Wales, over 124 miles distant. Transporting those stones was considered the absolute pinnacle of Neolithic capability. But at the dead center of the monument lies a unique 6-ton slab of green-gray rock known as the altar stone. For decades, it was assumed to have originated in Wales alongside the bluestones. In the late summer of 2024, however, a team of researchers led by Anthony Clark at Curtin University quietly dismantled that assumption forever. Using high-precision mass spectrometry, the team analyzed tiny microscopic mineral grains locked inside fragments of the altar stone. What they found within the chemical signature of the rock was utterly staggering. The minerals were astonishingly ancient, some dating back up to 2 billion years. This specific chemical fingerprint did not match any quarry in Wales, nor did it match anything in southern England. When the researchers mapped the elemental profile against sandstone formations across the entire British landscape, the closest and only match was the old red sandstone of the Orcadian Basin, located in the far northeastern reaches of Scotland. The implications of this discovery sent a shockwave through the archaeological community. The altar stone did not travel 124 miles. It traveled nearly 500 miles. Moving a 6-ton block of solid rock across the entire length of Britain over 5,000 years ago would have been nearly impossible by land, given the dense, ancient forests and treacherous terrain. This means these ancient engineers almost certainly used marine shipping. They had to load a 6-ton megalith onto a vessel and navigate it along hundreds of miles of rugged, dangerous coastline, demonstrating an understanding of tides, boat building, and deep-sea navigation far more advanced than anyone previously believed. Stonehenge was not a local project. The sourcing of the stones reveals a society with complex trade routes, advanced maritime logistics, and an extraordinary level of centralized organization that spanned the entirety of ancient Britain. But the mystery deepens significantly when you look beyond where the stones came from and examine what happens when you stand inside them. The builders of Stonehenge didn't just understand geography and astronomy, they were absolute masters of sound. In 2020, acoustical engineer Trevor Cox and his team at the University of Salford conducted the most detailed acoustic recreation of Stonehenge ever attempted. They built a highly precise 1:12 scale model of the monument using 3D printed stones, arranging them exactly as they would have stood thousands of years ago. They placed this model inside a specialized acoustic chamber, completely isolated from modern noise, to test how voices and instruments would have behaved within the ancient circle. The results were astonishing. The recordings revealed that Stonehenge was explicitly designed as a contained, highly controlled acoustic environment. Inside the circle, the massive stones produced a reverberation time of just over half a second. This specific acoustic property drastically enriches the quality of the human voice and heavily magnifies the impact of rhythmic music. However, outside the circle, this effect disappeared entirely. Furthermore, despite the presence of massive, flat stone surfaces, the arrangement completely eliminated sharp reflections and echoes. The inner circle of stones actively disrupted the sound waves bouncing off the outer ring, creating a perfectly isolated sonic chamber. To an ancient person, stepping into Stonehenge would have been a profoundly overwhelming sensory experience. In the Neolithic era, the world was quiet. Voices scattered quickly across open plains and dense forests absorbed sound. But inside Stonehenge, even a normal speaking voice would sound unnervingly full, powerful, and omnipresent. The rhythm of drums would not just be heard, it would physically surround and vibrate through the bodies of those standing inside. This was not an accident of architecture. The acoustics were engineered. Stonehenge functioned as a sensory amplifier, capable of heightening the emotional state of a gathered crowd, inducing an overwhelming sense of awe, reverence, or even fear. The builders understood how to use architecture to manipulate human psychology on a massive scale, and they used this sensory power to observe the darkest, most terrifying events in the sky. Everyone knows that Stonehenge aligns perfectly with the rising sun of the summer solstice and the setting sun of the winter solstice. But recent celestial modeling has brought a much darker, far more profound alignment into focus, one that doesn't track the life-giving sun, but rather the haunting cycles of the moon. In January 2025, the world witnessed an incredibly rare astronomical event known as a major lunar standstill. This phenomenon occurs only once every 18.6 years. During a major standstill, the moon rises and sets at extreme points on the horizon, points that the sun never reaches. For ancient farming communities whose lives were strictly governed by solar cycles, watching the moon push past the absolute boundaries of the sun would have been a terrifying and deeply significant celestial anomaly. It was a generational event, likely signaling a time when the deities of the night were believed to be stronger than the gods of the day. When researchers mapped the exact placement of the stones against these ancient star maps, they found that Stonehenge was purpose-built to track this exact phenomenon. Around 2500 BC, the ancient builders placed 4 specific megaliths, known as the station stones, in a perfect rectangle around the main circle. The long axis of this rectangle aligns flawlessly with the most southerly rising point of the moon during a major standstill. It is a feat of celestial geometry that requires decades of continuous, unblinking observation to calculate. But here is where the discovery becomes deeply unsettling. Surrounding the monument is an ancient earthen bank containing 56 circular pits, known as the Aubrey Holes. Excavations of these pits revealed significant ancient deposits and materials left behind by the builders. When researchers mapped the astronomical lines, they found a fascinating correlation. The heaviest concentration of these specific findings lies in the southeastern section of the monument. They are clustered directly along the alignment line that points to the southernmost moonrise during the 18.6-year standstill. These profound markers at Stonehenge were not placed randomly. They were carefully, deliberately positioned to intersect with the extreme path of the moon. Was this a profound religious devotion, an attempt to align their traditions with a powerful lunar presence? Or was it a vital cosmic event that demanded deep reverence, careful preparation, and intense acoustic rituals to maintain the balance of their universe? We may never know the precise theology of the builders, but the evidence left behind is irrefutable. Stonehenge was not a simple, primitive calendar. It was the absolute pinnacle of Neolithic science. It was a massive, precision-designed environment that required the logistical coordination of an entire island nation, navigating 6-ton stones across hundreds of miles of ocean. It was an acoustic chamber engineered to manipulate the human mind and amplify the power of ritual. And it was an astronomical observatory built to track the deepest, most extreme cycles of the cosmos, aligning their monumental creation with the heavens. When you stand before the towering megaliths today, you're not just looking at a pile of old rocks. You're looking at the undeniable proof that humanity's ancient ancestors were brilliant, determined, and capable of engineering absolute marvels.